We are live.
All right. Mudit, will you introduce me at the starting? Right?
No. Let me first ग्रुप में मैं लिंक डाल देता हूँ एक सेकंड.
हाँ ठीक है.
We are live.
ओके. ओके. हेलो, आई एम ऑडिबल?
Yes, Mudit, you are.
Okay. So hey everyone, today we have Arghya Chatterjee. He's the XAT topper and auxiliary alumni. He has got 99.4 percentile in XAT, and he will be guiding you all. He
Hi everyone. I hope everyone is keeping well. I hope everyone is doing good. Yeah. Mudit, are we good to go or should we wait for a little while longer?
प्लीज वो उसको ऑफ कर दीजिए प्लीज. ऑफ ऑफ दैट स्मार्टफोन वॉइस इज echoing here.
I have. So, hi everyone. Thank you for coming to this live. Uh, I am sure a lot of you would be quite worried about your current, ZAT. And one of those reasons would be possibly not all of you would have had a great CAT experience. And I always say that no matter how well you are prepared for any exam, it's everything is about that particular day, right? So I know what you're going through. We myself, I have gone through a similar situation before. But as I say, CAT is the first exam that comes in, and it's also the most competitive. So there is a lot depending on you. There's a lot going through your mind, which is why sometimes it ends up happening. So here's my first highlight that I would like to highlight during this live, right? A CAT exam which did not go well does not mean that you are not prepared. So I would like you all to kind of register that into your brain right away. So a bad CAT exam does not mean that you are not prepared. Uh, it's very difficult to be able to, kind of handle the pressure on that particular day. And it's very difficult to kind of move ahead with so much thought in mind. CAT holds a lot of importance to a lot of people, and going into the exam hall with that kind of pressure is always difficult. Now, having said that, we have another very important exam in front of us, which is not only the way to a top B school, but also accepted across quite a few of them, right? And the exam that I'm talking about right now is, of course, XAT. XAT is a different kind of exam, I would say, than CAT. So the flow of our discussion currently will be that I will talk about a little bit about how the strategy of the XAT exam is going to be. What is the best way in which probably you can prepare for this XAT? And it becomes very important to have the right strategy, right? The reason behind it is that the runway to the XAT exam is very short. You only have 30 days and you have, nobody, everybody's kind of putting in their all for the CAT exam. And then as soon as the CAT exam is over, you realize that you have just a 30-day of runway before the next big exam is here. And you also realize that XAT in a lot of ways is quite different from CAT, right? So I will talk about what possible strategies you will be able to follow with respect to the XAT exam. And then that will be topped up with a more in-depth discussion of the elephant in the room. And that is the DM section, right? Decision making is a section which is not done in any other MBA entrance examinations in India. It's a very novel section that you will face, and it has its own set of challenges, which is very different from doing a DR or an LR uh, or a VRC. Now, uh, and then I will take up some of the questions that I had received for the session, and I will try to answer all of your questions like that. So, without wasting any further time, let's go directly into the strategy of XAT. Now, XAT is an exam which is 3 hours and 10 minutes long. The first fundamental difference, right, between CAT and XAT is that CAT, you face one section at one time. In CAT, obviously, the first difference would be the time is shorter than XAT. XAT believes in giving you that flexibility that you can choose your strongest section and you can choose to invest time in it, right? So it's a 3 hour and 10-minute long exam, which primarily has two broader parts. The first part would be obviously the verbal and logical ability. Then comes the decision making and the quantitative ability and data interpretation, right? So for these three parts, there are two parts which are you're already very well versed with: verbal and logical ability and quantitative and data interpretation section. But I will tell you where these sections also kind of differ in XAT from CAT. There is a minute difference in the way you should attempt a VA and logical ability section in CAT in XAT rather than what you do in a VARC section for CAT. And of course, the most it can be said famous or infamous is the decision making section. And the second subset consists of the general knowledge and the essay. Now, I am sure a lot of you must be. Let's go with the pyramid structure, right? I will kind of give you the solution, and then I will get into the why of things. We have been taught that this is kind of the most effective way to reach and understand the solution. Now, let's talk about the GK and the essay writing part of it, right? Uh, you must be all very worried about the GK section in particular because there is a lot of things happening on a regular basis, and GK consists of static and dynamic GK, right? And current affairs. Um, so you are worried. It makes complete sense to be worried about the GK section. Let me first tell you and release a little bit of stress to you. GK section is not a section which is considered of a very high weightage when it comes to XLRI in particular. And I'm talking about only XLRI right now. If you score, first of all, the GK percentile doesn't count in the overall percentile of CAT. Your overall, XAT, your overall XAT percentile would be what you get from the three sections prior. And your GK percentile would come separately. Now, GK, although where does it then why does it does Accelerate, kind of give you a GK section? It's obviously a plus to do very well in the GK section when there will be close competition between two candidates who have similar kinds of percentiles and have similar kind of experiences with respect to the interviews. GK then becomes a crucial differentiating factor which is taken into consideration. I myself performed pretty averagely in GK, but that did not hinder myself from performing very well in XAT. They did not hinder me at all during the interviews and during the direct conversion to XLRI. Uh, in one of the questions that was sent to me, some of you asked about what are the scholarships that we can get and all of those things, and this point particularly brings that to mind for me. Uh, there is a scholarship called ABG scholarship, which is given to the best performers. So when you will have a combined kind of list of all the top performing candidates, and when you get into that into Accelerate, the dean, the dean academics would send a list directly to ABG that okay, these are our top 10 students in HR, and these are the top 10 students in in BM, and they would be taken forward to that ABG shortlist, like for the next rounds of interview. Even though I performed averagely in my GK section, I would tell you that I was in that ABG shortlist of 8 people who were recommended by the Dean Academics. So you understand that I must have been in the kind of the top of the list when the final list was created based on your must scores of your interview and your SAT. And obviously, if GK would have been considered, I would not have made that list. So the point of me saying this is just that GK, although it's important, I am not dismissing it. Do not spend a lot of time reading static GK, reading current affairs. Okay? Let's get that very clear. You study GK when you have free time, or when you have, you don't want to study, you've been studying the entire day, want to take a little bit of rest, read current affairs. It'll help you during your interviews, right? And that would prepare you for the GK. Yes. So I see a question on my chat is what should I study the quants in that and how it is different. I'll get to that details of how quant is different and how what strategy you should follow for quants in particular. So now that we have it aside, the essay writing section. Now that essay writing section is very important when that is considered. That essay writing section directly has a bearing on the score, the kind of sometimes it also has a bearing on the interview questions that are being asked. And For that, you should obviously go through the current affairs. You should have a knowledge of what is happening in the world. You should also be able to kind of connect two, three things, right? So I remember very particularly while in my Excel days, right? There was a class on communications and strategy, and a professor brought up a question. It was along the lines of essay writing itself. So he asked me, what is your favorite color, right? And it seems like a simple question. Anybody, would take 2 seconds to answer that question, right? But what was special about that question? While they asked me my favorite color, black, and black was my answer, we had to kind of think about and kind of connect why is black, the most important color for me, right? Obviously, there you can go ahead and say that it is just is, right? But you have to think a little bit more than that. You have to think how you can connect. That the black is just kind of the absence of colors and what it implies in your life, how the situations and things that you see around you, right? We can talked about a little bit about the racial disparities which occur because of the color segregation and all of those factors. So when you even if you have a very pretty simple and straightforward topic, just think about how more can that particular topic have a bearing on your life? How more can that particular topic have a bearing on the society? And kind of think it in that manner, and kind of implement it in your answers. One of the major motto of XLRI, which is for the greater good. For the greater good. Now, why is this important? Everything that is done in XLRI, be it the professors, be it the administration of XLRI, or be it the paper setters of that, all of them kind of have this motto in mind when they're setting question papers, right? They want to create leaders who will work for the greater good of the society. Which brings me back to the point that I was trying to make, that always, anytime, whether you're doing a decision making section or you're writing an essay, think about the greater good. Think about what can have a bearing on the society, right? Greater bearing on the society. So that is should be your tactic for the essay. Now, as I was saying, there is no sectional time limit whatsoever. You are completely free to move from part one to part two and to part three. Once you complete part one, you'll be allowed to move to the part two, which is the essay and the essay writing and the GK section, right? So you can move part to part. Now that is a blessing, but also that can be a curse. Why so? In CAT, you know that since you have fixed time limits for each section and the section come in order after order, you can't go back. You know that whatever you have to do with that particular section, you have to do with that 40 minutes, right? You can't think later that, okay, I can come back and maximize the score. That is good in one way. It helps you time manage. You do not have the pressure of time management with you. In that, time management becomes absolutely difficult. That extra, so while it feels like it is better that you can go back and attempt all of these sections individually, it is very important that you have know how to manage your time and you prepare it accordingly while attempting the past year's questions or other mock exams, right? So you do so kind of try, and so my suggestion here would be attempt a fair number of questions which you think will make you pass that threshold or pass that cutoff threshold, right? Attempt a minimum of 10 questions in each section first. Do 10 questions of, and this 10 questions should not be 10 doubtful questions, right? You should be pretty much sure about what you are, when you are attempting this 10 questions, and it should be with utmost accuracy that you're attempting this 10 questions. So do 10 questions of verbal, do 10 questions of DM, and do 10 questions of quants. And then kind of move to back to your strongest section to maximize the marks. Did it work for me? Yes, it did. I attempted, and I will keep giving you examples of myself, right? So one second. Yeah, so I will keep giving examples from my life. It did work for me. I was the strongest in the VARC section of that, right? Um, what I did was, and although it was very tempting for me to kind of think like, okay, I will spend my entire time and do the entire VARC section first, and then move ahead with DM and quant. I know a lot of my friends during my preparation time who kind of followed this and did not work out for them, right? Because once you put everything, there is bound to be certain questions in every section which is meant for you to take time while solving, right? And which is why if you plan on doing the entire section first, then that will lead you to have loss in time going forward to other sections. There you will feel the pressure of not being able to manage time. You will fumble, and even it'll lead to mistakes. So do not, my suggestion from my, again, as I kind of keep on saying, strategy is very tailor-made. Do not think of applying the same strategy. Develop your strategy. Take guidance from all the strategies, but make your own, right? But what worked for me was I attempted every 10 to 12 questions in each section. Then I came back to my VRC section, attempted the entire section, and did my quants, and then went back to the DM and completed the DM section. What happened? I could easily get through DM sections cutoff. And obviously, with a very good percentile as well, not just the cutoff. I could secure a very good percentile in quants, and I scored a 99.98 in the VARC section of the XAT paper. So that maximized my score as well as ensured that I do not fall behind in any particular section. So just my 2 cents on how to attempt the paper and how to time manage accordingly, because you have that flexibility in case of that, right? So yeah, so that is pretty much it about the overall kind of attempting. Now there will be 26 questions in verbal and logical ability, roughly 21 questions in decision making, and 28 questions in quant and data interpretation. And I'll tell you the strategy that I followed with each of them, right? There's generally four RC sets in VRC, and I'm starting with VRC now. Four RC sets in VRC, uh, roughly around 12 questions there. There are obviously certain poem-based tests, some fill in the blanks. There will be certain critical reasoning questions, obviously parajumbles and grammar questions, right? So, seeing these grammar questions, you must be thinking that, oh, I need to study the entire Ren and Martin, what we used to study during our school days, and study grammar separately. Please do not, and again I repeat, it is verbal ability and logical reasoning. It is not a test of English language. So please do not sit and in this 1 month's time study grammar. Okay? You read and keep reading, which will develop your basic sense about which grammar should be. The grammar questions are very straightforward. They will be you will It will be very easy to attempt. But for those particular three questions in grammar, do not go and start studying grammar from anew, right? That will just waste your existing preparation and your preparation time. With respect to RCs, there is a slight difference that I myself had felt when I had analyzed certain papers of CAT and that, right? So what happens in CAT is that the RCs, the language they use for the RCs, is relatively straightforward. There will be no word in that particular RC that you will struggle to understand, right? There might be some, but most of the time there isn't. In that, while in comparison, the RC passages are relatively written in a more difficult fashion. Sometimes they end up using words which are not used in our regular lingo, and it might happen that the passages are a little bit longer as well. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. One major advantage that you have in that VALR section is that that VALR section, the questions are not as complicated or as confusing as CAT. They are relatively more straightforward in nature. They test you on your understanding of the passage, right? Try to sense the tone of the passage, what the tone of that passage is, right? If you face any particular word whose meaning you don't understand, right? Don't just leave the passage because it's hard. Try and read the beginning, the end, and the entire paragraph, right? Once you have read all of those things, try and understand what the tone of that passage is. And then try and fit in, according to you, what word should come in there. What do you think is the meaning that it's trying to convey? What is the essence of the passage? And using that, try to deduce the meaning of that word. Not exactly, you will not get the exact meaning of the word, but you will get a pretty close alternative, which will help you solve the entire passage. So do not be afraid when you're solving RCs. With respect to poems, it's the same strategy. Poems are short in nature, right? And they're written in a kind of more complicated kind of way. But with even when you are dealing with poems, try to look at the bigger picture, right? There is always poems, how they're different from RCs is RC will be a comprehension test, right? How well you understand what is written, but everything is written. Poem, that is not the case. Poem is very short in nature, but nothing much is written about what it is actually trying to convey. So that is something you have to understand while you are reading the poem. What exactly is this poem trying to convey to me? Right? So that will help you look at the bigger picture. Try to think about things like what can be, what environmental or probably surrounding or societal factors is this poem trying to talk about? What if that poem has a bigger message which it's trying to give, right? So think about all of these things while you're attempting a poem, and that should help you. Parajumbles in that would be, I think, are longer. There are more number of sentences that you need to parajumble. But again, since that these are not theta questions, you kind of have an option to look at the options of the parajumble, right? Look at what can be the possible beginning and the end sentences. What can be the possible middle sentences, and try to gauge that from the options. That will help you. So once you have kind of, you see, let's say two, three options with one as your starting statement. Read the first statement. Think to yourself, can this be my starting statement? Does it make sense? If, let's say, you're trying to finalize a middle statement in parajumble, remove that statement, read the others that you have, kind of ordered. Do you feel something is missing when you're reading that entire thing? Do you feel there might be adding that particular statement at that particular place is actually leading to a better understanding of the entire 5 to 6 sentences? That will help you get confirmed with parajumbles. But having said that, parajumbles, I've always said, and I'll keep on saying, parajumbles are one section which actually the accuracy is quite low in that particular section. So while you are attempting parajumbles, be cautious. I would suggest, and that is something I followed, which is why I'm suggesting to you guys to keep parajumbles for the last. Once you're done with all the questions in the other ZAT paper, and you think that there are no more questions that you would like to attempt, it is then that you try to do the parajumbles, right? Uh, Sometimes you will find your vocabulary put to test. Um, there will be VA questions in particular, right, which will ask you to include a particular choice of words. Just think about, just read the surrounding parts of the passages, read the paragraph above and below, and then try and think about what the question is trying to convey. I will suggest that you do not, you make a habit of reading through the passage once and trying to answer the questions based on what your retention of that passage, right? You can obviously go back and to the passage to make sure that you remember correctly, but that kind of leads to a loss of time. And when time is of essence, you really can't afford to lose any. So if you can just make it a habit of retention of whatever you read, kind of read the entire passage and think to yourself while you're practicing right now. Read the passage and think to yourself that what did the passage actually say? How was the tone? What was he actually trying to convey, the writer of the passage? Just think to yourself. You might be wrong. There might be parts that you forget when you're starting out. There might be parts which you are missing out, right? There's no problem. There's no harm in that. But before you go back to the passage, while you're practicing again, before you go back to the passage, think and kind of register in your brain, okay, this was the flow of the passage. The first paragraph talked about this, the second paragraph talked about this. Make a mental summary, a mental gist of the entire thing, right? So that will immensely help you in VRC. What about the decision making section? So this section, as I've mentioned, is very novel in nature. It consists of 21 questions. There are multiple things which are included in this section. It has business scenarios, it has HR scenarios, it talks about ethics and ethical dilemma, it talks about morality. It also has some questions like complex arrangement questions, certain numerical questions. Those are very small in numbers, right? And you, with your practice in the LR that you have gotten during preparing for CAT, I think that is something you'll all be able to tackle. What makes this section novel is you have to have, so like I told you, right, for the greater good. you have to have a balance. You all will, you are preparing for this exam. The ones who will make it to XLRI, you will go and become managers handling huge corporations, right? At leadership positions. So you need to find a balance between all of the things. Okay? So when you are attempting the XAT DM section, keep a few pointers in mind, right? And obviously everybody likes a story, so I'll kind of tell you a short story, right? Right after this. But the pointers are, every time you read a DM paragraph, just remember the first point. DM paragraph is not VA. It's not VALR section. It is not it, although it might seem from the length of the passage, it might seem from the way it's written down that okay, what is the difference between a VARC and a DM section? But there is, because if there was no difference, then it would not have existed as a separate section, right? So it is first point to note is that it is not VARC. DM section is not VARC. Second, while you are attempting this DM section, the more I am sorry. Yeah, I lost you guys for a second, but now I'm back. Yes, so I was talking about the DM section, and I will give you a short story. It's not a case, but it's a short story. What is that story? Let's say we have a professor, right? And we have a bunch of students who are taking an exam. The professor has allowed for no proctoring. It's a 10-minute short quiz that the professor is taking. There is no proctoring during the first test. There is no proctoring during the second test. Okay? There is no proctoring during the third test. Now, as there was no proctoring during the first three tests, some students kind of feel that, okay, I can probably, kind of discuss amongst my group and answer the questions. Nobody is looking, right? Now, this happens in the fourth test, right? This happens in the fifth test. But there's one student who in the fifth test, kind of falls behind the other students and goes on and complains to the professor that, okay, this is what's going on. Now, that professor comes to know about this and he threatens, the bunch of students that they'll be thrown out of the college. He asks them to either come up and confess, and not only confess your own involvement, but also confess all the students who are involved with your group, right? So here I pause for a second. I ask you, when you hear this case, right, when you are hearing this, just sit back and think who all are getting affected by this, right? Think about all possible stakeholders, and that will lead you to think about how those stakeholders will be affected. So in this case, who are the stakeholders? The professors are the stakeholders, right? Very clear. The students who are involved in it are the stakeholders. Certain students who probably are in the other groups with that particular candidate might be their stakeholders as well. Who else can be the stakeholder? Probably the class representative. That is something you might not have thought of, right? On the go, because it was not a part of the story, but they might be an important stakeholder. Similarly, the parents of those particular students, they might be an important stakeholder. Why so? So you know about the B school fees, right? So once they are thrown out, their entire fees and their entire future, for that matter, goes to a toss. So the parents would be a very important stakeholders to consider, because the students would consider their parents as a very major stakeholder, and their decisions of whether they will come up and reveal, who all were involved, or whether they will not, will completely depend on it, right? So identifying stakeholders is very, 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 very important while you read the passage. Once you have read it, once you have identified who your stakeholders are, right, you do not make any emotional judgment. Whatever is mentioned in the passage, there is a reason why those passages are long, because they give you all the data that you need to answer the question, and they do not want you to assume or make an emotional judgment based on assumptions. Do not make emotional judgment. Try to control, or having emotional control is a very important factor. Sure. Okay. I have seen that question in chat, and I'll answer it soon. Uh, Third point. Remember, you are working for the company. You are a part of the company, and the company has assigned certain set of responsibilities for you. And while it might seem as a very good option, so just consider the case of layoffs, right? It's bad. We see it from at the news. We see it from the newspaper that 10,000 people, 12,000 people have been laid off from a particular company, right? And it is always with a negative connotation. We read that news and it's immediately strikes our brain that yeah, what kind of company is it? Why is it laying off so many people? But as managers for that company, that is okay. That judgment is okay when you are sitting at the outside of the company. When you are a part of that company, right? You have to think about, if I don't lay off this set of people, will my company survive? Right? You need to be empathetic while you are taking those decisions. But also along with that, you need to also identify that you're working for the company, and that is your major stakeholder, and you should try and balance both of them. It's all a game of balance. This entire paper, this entire DM section is all a game of balance. And the fourth most important kind of topic which you will see would be ethics versus morality, and that particularly loves this set of questions, right? What is the difference between the ethics and morality? Morality is kind of dictated by society, while ethics is something which is which is imbibed in you. It is Ethics is your own moral compass, right? So we can all make a general statement based on morality that bribing is not right, and of course it's not right. It's Bribing is illegal, right? But think about the person who has a very critical situation, who has a very, as a very close family member, requires very immediate help at a certain hospital. And the ambulance person says that this is nighttime, I will not come. And the person says that if you come, I will give you 3,000 rupees or 4,000 rupees or whatever, right? And the ambulance person accepts that and he comes and picks you up. Was that wrong for that person who was in dire need of help? So that is ethics, right? So we can't just state that something for sure is wrong or right. It is not black and white. Most of the times, this is gray, which is where in exactly in this gray area is where the DM section exists. Black and white is okay for quants. You know whether if this answer is wrong or right. There's no double thoughts about it. But for the DM section, only it only operates in that gray area. So you need to have very, very clear logic. You need to not make any emotional uh, logic during while solving those questions. You should identify all the stakeholders that particular case would affect. Of course, there are segregations, right? There are HR questions. You might say there are organizational behavior questions. There might be ethical dilemma. But my suggestion to you would be, don't segregate it in your mind as a topic. Don't say that, okay, this question is an OB question, is an organizational behavior question, right? Or this question is an ethics versus morality. Take it as a puzzle. Think of it as a real case that is being presented to you. What will you do? Will you also remember not to take any extreme actions? Again, I know I have been repeating it for the entire webinar, but keep a balance in all your answers while you're answering the question, right? So that overall covers roughly the DM section. For the quant section, somebody asked a question, how do I prepare for quants? And I would like to reply to that person saying that quants is kind more difficult when it comes to CAT, and you already might know, and I'm sure you know, sorry, that CAT quant was difficult, but this year around, right? But when you are coming into that, please practice questions which are a notch level higher than CAT, right? Always practice questions which are a notch higher than CAT. Generally, the TI questions which come in that, they are relatively easier to tackle. So for this set of DI questions, if you can go ahead and do those DI questions, please go and do the DI questions. The DI questions are very doable. This is nothing compared to the DI that you have done for CAT. You are more than prepared to attempt it. Go and do the DI questions, right? With respect to arithmetic, the questions again are very logical, a notch higher. So, you know what the major difference between XAT and CAT is while quants is concerned? XAT tests you across. So, let's say you have a particular geometry question, right? Your entire, all the theorems that are present during at your disposal, for solving that question, any one of them or a combination of them might be required to solve that question, right? And one thing that I like to mention is that quants is not mathematics, right? If it would have been maths, it would have been named as maths. And in that case, the people who are not from a maths background would be at an unfair advantage. It is called quants because it tries to test your aptitude towards quantitatives, towards numbers, towards your thinking process about how, if you have certain data points, will you reach to a logical conclusion, right? So for that, all of the basic tools. So don't think of it as okay, okay, this is arithmetic percentage question, this is ratio and proportions questions. Try to kind of think about a ratio proportions question as whether if can is this question possible using a percentage? You know, is this question that I'm solving right now in arithmetic, can I include algebra in that? Can I take a variable x and solve this question instead of going through the arithmetic route? What I'm trying to convey through this is that do not limit yourself when you are attempting this section. Think of all the things that you have studied, right? Speed time, speed distance formulas, your geometry formulas, all of those things, right? Try to think of them as tools. They are not here to give you to hinder you. They are here to help you solve that question. Every data point that you need to solve that question is there in the question itself, right? You have the tools and you just have to solve this particular puzzle. Take every question as a puzzle. You just have to select the right tools and use it the right way to solve the question. And that is why this section is called quantitative aptitude, and not mathematics. So practice algebra, practice arithmetic. Since the time is short, if you're not very sure about higher mathematics topics, right, like for example, probability or something like that, you can keep that for a later time in your preparation. But be sure to do arithmetic and be sure to do algebra very well, very prepare them very well. Geometry also you need to prepare well because there is a good number of questions which come from geometry, but geometry is also relatively harder and time consuming. So if you have time is an issue for you, right? If you have not prepared geometry section that well while you were doing CAT, I would suggest you keep geometry section for a later stage when you're done with preparing the other two sections, then you can come and do the geometry section, right? So start from the very basics, begin focusing on calculations, and I think with a strong clarity about the concepts and how to use those concepts, you should be able to ace the quant section as well, right? So with this, we have now talked about the entire strategy of CAT, sorry, of XAT, my mistake. Uh, and would be happy to take up the questions that were asked right previously as well as currently in the chat. So the first question that I see here is that how many hours are required to dedicate for XAT prep every day, considering that I want to get a 99 percentile. And please let us know what are the dailies to do. Okay. So I'll start with the last part of the question. The first thing that you need to do is read for the VRC section. What reading will do is ensure you not only do well in your VRC section, it will also ensure that you are updated with the current affairs, which will help you a lot. And trust me on that, it will help you a lot during the interviews, right? So read newspapers, read current affairs. Keep your morning hour or two for this, only this. And I think that should sort you. 1 month down the line, you'll be thanking me when you have that interview call with you. You will be thanking me that you are already well versed with what is going around the world, right? So that is one. You should keep practice, I would say, keep shuffling between two things. So if you and this is what worked for me. Again, I'm putting out a word of caution. Strategy is different for everybody. This is something which worked for me, which is why I'm conveying it to you. It might be completely different for you. So you need to give particular number of tests and try out different strategies to find out what is working best for you. But do not give more than 3, 4, 5 days to decide on it, because once you have decided on it, you need to stick with that strategy so that it becomes a habit for you. So yeah. So what I did was I either used to do quants and VRC in one day, and the next day I would try a different combination where I would do a VRC and a DM, and then again the next day I used to shuffle and do a DM and a quant. Right. So that would ensure that in 3 days I am able to give enough time to all the sections. It's imperative that you do not miss out practicing on any section at all, absolutely at all. Okay, you need to regularly practice every section, and meanwhile also do past year's question paper. Take up mock tests, take up any mock test, and I see and I know this question would be coming, which mock test to take, and there are n number of mock tests which are existing, right? But that is not important right now. You can take up any mock tests, they are all good. But what is important is once you've taken it up, you diligently stick to it and you do all of those mocks, right? Before you attempt that paper. My suggestion would be, instead of doing the that paper in a sectional manner, try to do the paper and try to take it as a ZAT test. Nothing would be closer to a ZAT test than the actual ZAT papers, right? So try to take them as a complete test. Sit for 3 hours, do the entire thing, follow your own strategy, right? What you have devised for you, whether you want to do all the sections together, whether you want to do 10 questions of each section and come back and do your strongest first. So do that and do that, try that out with the original ZAT papers. That will help you a lot while you're tackling questions, right? So keep every kind of alternate, or I would say every alternate 2 days for preparing for the past with along with the past year questions for the mocks, right? It's very important. Now, if you're spending 3 hours for the mock, that that day itself, you should sit for 6 hours, double the time that is required for solving the mock. You should sit, if 3 hours you're solving the mock, sit for 6 hours and analyze the entire paper end to end. Not only the questions that you couldn't do or you did wrong, but also please do analyze the question that you do right? See and think if there is some other way that the question could have been attempted. See if there is a shorter way that you can think of attempting a particular question, or if there is any particular aspect that you might have missed, right? So very important to do that as well. And I think with the proper combination of all of these things, you should be able to ace it. That I know it's already third today, and you do not have much time to go before that. But trust me, you have more than enough time for preparing for that. if you do it diligently every day, if you do it with respect to a proper strategy, you will be able to, complete it. I am sure you will all be able to ace that. On that note, I would like to end today. But before I end, a very important kind of announcement is that I will be having that decision making course where I will try. I have, while I was, that InsideIIM team kind of asked me if I would be able to do the course, and of course I always wanted to give back to this community, and I said that I would love to do it. Um, so decision making, I went back, to a few of my professors to kind of get into their mindset to understand. I've studied from them for 2 years. I wanted to understand that what is it exactly that they kind of look for in the decision making course. Um, so I can probably give you the nobody knows what the answers to a decision making course is, right? But what I can probably give you is the closest idea to what this decision making course shall be. I can give you a closest idea what is the thought process probably that goes behind while making these questions. I can give you a holistic idea about how to approach a particular question and how to solve it, right? Uh, so as you can see probably on my screen, we will have a DM section. That section will have obviously will have different parts to it. And what exactly are those parts? That will be on my screen now. As you can see, we have mocks and sectional tests. We have efficient ways to solve DM sets. We'll have an exclusive DM WhatsApp group wherein you can fire me questions anytime you want, and I will try and answer all of them. You will have live sessions. There are 5 optional sessions. If anybody wants to, kind of know how to attempt QA and how to attempt BA and just get through some of the questions along with me to see how we solve an attempt, there will be 5 sessions for that. uh, Additional exam tips, right, on how to take the sectional, how to do the test taking, and obviously, since it's a DM course, there will be exclusive sessions on decision making itself, right? And I can probably help you understand how to, get into the mindset of XLI and kind of solve the decision making questions. So yes, that will be essentially it. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for joining. We'll see you guys soon, I hope. And yeah, thank you and all the very best for that and all the other processes that are coming. Thank you.